Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of the Near Death Experience series with Illuminated Hearts. I have with me today Danny Bader, who I'm very excited. So thank you so much for coming on today, Danny.
You're welcome, Tori. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, so I met Danny through another one of our series members, Deb Atella. She led me to you, and I'm so excited to be sitting here talking to you right now about your experience, because as I continued, I'll be honest, Danny, like as I started to dive into you, I'm like, wait, the information doesn't stop coming. I mean, you have 3 books, you have a podcast, you are a life coach, right? And you have a TED Talk. Wait, you have a TED Talk.
I
So
do have one. Yeah. I have one TED Talk, or,
yeah.
original one, but just one. Yep. I enjoy doing that. It's primarily for middle school and kids going into high school. So it was a cool audience to talk with.
Yeah. So, and all these things that you do now are in a way related to your experience that happened to you. Am I right on that?
Yes. I think they are a product of that experience. I always had when I was growing up, I always had a desire to be a teacher or a coach, and I kind of suppressed that for a little while. And then as you move through life and you have some events, some more significant than others, they certainly put you down a different path. So I'm quite happy to be on the path that I'm on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really interested to hear more in depth about what happened to you. So I believe, based on my research, you were about 28 when you had your near-death experience.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us what happened.
So yeah, I'll give you the quick story. Is my friend and I were lowering a ladder, and it was the end of the day. We were putting a roof on a house. So I worked for 2 brothers that had a roofing company, and the one brother and I were lowering the ladder at about 4:00 in the afternoon on Tuesday, July 28th, 1992. Always etched in my memory there. And as we were doing it, I looked up and I said, "Hey, what about those wires? Are we going to be clear?" And he said, "Yes, we did it this way this morning." And we were just kind of, you're moving fast. I was getting ready to go play golf with some friends. He was going to take his young son fishing. But I had a kind of feeling that, I don't know about this. And I didn't pay attention to it. And we started to lower the ladder. And the ladder hit the electric line by a very, very small margin. It didn't even, when it hit the line, it kind of nicked the line and continued to fall, and then got caught on a telephone line. Stay with me, you'll see how I know that. At any rate, when we hit the electric line and that electricity came down the metal ladder and it went into my body and it went into my friend's body, it was about 8,000, 9,000 volts of electricity. And it went into my hands and it went out my feet. I had a hole in each side of each feet, 4 holes. And as soon as I got hit with that, I had an absolute calm, a peace. I knew I was dead, or I knew I was dying. It's still very difficult to describe in the words that we use in the English language, because it was an experience that's not describable in the words. The English language makes up words, right, to describe experiences. Well, you'd have to make up new words almost. So anyhow, I have this peace, I have this calm, and I see the other brother now. He's up on the roof, and he had turned, and he's starting to come down the ladder, and I'm yelling to him. "Hey, get your brother. Hey, get your brother, get your brother." And then the best way, again, I can describe it in our English language, is my soul, energy, spirit, life force, whatever makes Danny Bader go. Heart, lungs, brain. Yep, I need that. But there's an energy inside of me that makes me go. And I believe it's connected to God. That left my body. My body stayed on the ground, and this soul spirit just left. And I didn't go through a tunnel or a light. A lot of times people will talk, they go, "Did you go through a tunnel and see a light?" I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Are you sure? Tunnel or light?" "No, I thought everybody did tunnel." And I'm like, "No." And you have your near death, I'll have mine. And then they usually laugh, but they're so nervous. I just experienced a floating, peaceful darkness, calm, enveloped in love. That's the best way that I can describe it in our language. It was the best experience that I've ever had in my life, although I don't know that I was in my life then. And I was communicating with this source of my energy that I'll call God. Some people might call it something else. And I knew I had a choice to either stay or come back to Earth, to come back to life. And I expressed concern. I said, what about my mom? And what about my girlfriend, Lisa, who's my wife now, 28 years, 27 years. And as soon as I expressed that concern with this cosmic communication of God, that's when I realized I was right back in my body. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was Danny again. It was so wild.
Mm-hmm.
And my eyes didn't open, Tori, because they had never closed. And here's how I'll know this. So I'm laying there now, and I'm laying on my back, spread eagle. And I look up and I see that the ladder had now rested on the telephone line. It was about 12 feet off the ground. The other wires were much higher. So I'm laying there and I hear my one buddy who was coming down the ladder. He's working on his brother. He's trying to revive him and calling his name. And I can't move. I feel like I'm in fetal position, but I'm really in spread eagle. And I'm like, what is happening here? I finally get my motor skills after about a minute or two. And I crawl up next to the guy who's working on his brother, my buddy. And he looks at me and he says, how are you here? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll do mouth to mouth and you work on the chest. And we did. We worked for, a couple of minutes on our friend and his brother. And then the paramedics and the police came and I looked reasonably healthy. So they just kind of moved me away and said, okay, you guys get away. We got this. We got this. And I went and sat against a fence and my feet were killing me. I looked down and my work boots had little tiny pinholes in them, like black, leather work boots. And I'm like, so I took them off and my white socks had holes with black around them. And then I took them off and my feet had holes in every side. On the inside left, the biggest, it was kind of just, I was looking inside my foot, but there was no blood. I wrote a book about this called Back to Life, The Path of Resilience. And in there, it's based on a young guy named Jake. And Jake is essentially me. So I had to write it in story form. It was much easier for me than just to tell my own story. So it's a bit fictionalized, but very much based on reality. And the first line of the book is, why is there no blood? And that's what I'm saying to myself as I'm looking into my foot. So then my buddy Stu comes over. He's the one that was coming down the ladder. And he comes over and he's like, what happened? And I said, I guess we hit the wire. And he said, yes, I know, I heard it. And I said, I know, I saw you coming down the ladder. I was yelling to you to get your brother. And he looks at me, he says, what are you talking about? I said, I saw you coming down. I was yelling to you. I was yelling, get your brother, get your brother. And he looks, he said, you didn't say anything. So therein lies the part where I was conscious, but no longer alive in this life. So he says, I said, well, what happened? He said, I heard it. I came down. I came to you first. I rolled you over there. That's why I felt like I was in fetal position. He says, I rolled you over and your eyes are rolled back all white, foam on your mouth, no heart rate, no respiration. And he said, I worked on you for a couple of minutes and then I gave you up for dead. And then I ran across the street. This is 1992, so no iPhones or anything. Called 911, which is, that's not a 20-second call. You're on there giving a lot of information. And then ran back past me and got to his brother. And then, a minute or two, I crawled up. So he would always estimate that I was dead probably for 8 minutes or so.
Wow.
That was his estimate. But there's no question I was not of this world anymore.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is really a wild story, honestly.
Yeah, huh?
So, did you end up going to the hospital, or are they like, yeah, he's fine. He doesn't. You don't need to go.
Oh no. Once they realized I was hit, then they
Yeah.
put electrodes on and they took a quick look at my feet.
Mm-hmm.
And they took my friend away in one ambulance and they took me in another. And my heart was still kind of doing some crazy things, because our heart runs on an electric current, right? So that kind of zapped it. So I went to Abington Hospital first, and I was there for a few hours. And then they had to put me on a helicopter and flew me to Lehigh Valley, up near Allentown, Quakertown, because it was a trauma unit, better handled, better equipped to handle my injuries.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Yeah,
say
I was in for
that.
10 days.
10 days. Wow. Yeah, I was thinking, wow, can you imagine just having this experience and like, no, he's fine. Like, go home.
Yeah, go play golf. No, yeah. It was wild to say the least. And I talk about it now because it helps people.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a part of me that it's tough to talk about
Yeah.
because I lost my friend.
Yeah.
We lost my friend. Yeah, his wife lost a beautiful husband. His kids lost a great dad. And I suppressed that for a long time. I mean, I didn't write the book. Um, the first edition of this came out in 2012. So, that was 20 years after the accident,
Mm-hmm.
because I just fought along, and to tell my story and to write about it. People are going, well, it'll inspire other people. I'm like, yeah, but my friend lost his life that day. So it's always tough remembering that.
Mm-hmm.
Although I know he wants me to do what I'm doing to support others on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
No question.
Yeah. Did you have like contact with his wife as you were writing the book and kind of talk to her and like how, she's supporting it and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We stayed in touch an awful lot. After the accident, we still do.
mm-hmm.
Bruce has a daughter who was just married a year and a half, 2 years ago. I guess we went to the wedding, and she was just a few months old,
Mm-hmm.
at the time of the accident. So my wife and I went to the wedding and had a wonderful time. So yeah, I stay in touch with the family, and his widow has done just a wonderful job raising 3 kids. They're all wonderful young people. She's a great lady. So I just admire her courage and her strength.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. And in a way, though it's partly your story, you still get to honor him by, continuing his legacy and talking about him while you tell your story too, even though
Yes.
it's sad, but also you can continue his legacy in a sense.
Right. Yeah, it's a good thing. I think of him often, and I know we'll talk a little bit about spirit. I have felt his spirit many, many times,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm certain I'll continue to. And
Right.
it's a sense of peace for me usually, because it's usually in troubling times,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't follow numerology a whole lot. And I did kind of research the numbers 1111, 4 ones in a row, because I saw them an awful lot right after the accident. And anytime I would see them, whether it was on I started a car, started my Jeep up, or, on the side of a taxi cab or a billboard or whatever, it would always have a calming feeling for me. And I always associated them with him, that was his, because a lot of times they say the numbers we see are our angels and our spirits trying to communicate with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt his spirit, and it always gives me a sense of calm.
That's
So
really
yeah, I mean, I talked to him, and his other brother, my other friend, he passed a few years ago at way too early at 64. So yeah, I talked to both those guys a whole lot. I know they're keeping an eye on me and helping me out.
good. That's awesome. That is one question that I wanted to ask. Did you have anything change in you in terms of being able to see things like that more often? Like sometimes when people have a near death experience, they might say, like, oh, certain like intuitive abilities come on stronger or weird things happen more often. How did that happen to you?
Right. I did have some experiences, where I felt his spirit a whole lot, and they continue to happen. I don't know that I picked up any special powers, so to speak.
I think coming back to life is enough, right?
Yeah, yeah. The one thing that I offer to people, and I think that's the perspective that I can give people, regardless of their beliefs in their faith, or lack thereof, um, is that, say, what was the big difference? That accident happened right around 4 o'clock. So I would say at, 10 minutes to 4, I believed in heaven. The way I was raised as Catholic, and a follower of Jesus. I believed in heaven. And at quarter after 4, I knew of heaven.
Yep. Yeah.
It's no longer a belief right now, because faith is belief without proof.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely know that when my body stops and your body stops, there's a part of you that continues on. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd be crazy to think it's just me or somebody else. It's just, I think it's all of us. We're created from a divine source. And the more we tap into that in whichever way we do, as long as it's good and it promotes love, that's what we're here for. Everything else is just to kind of make money and pay the bills, and, pay college tuitions and everything else, which is important, right? But
Yeah.
it's really how we do that,
Yeah.
how we go about doing that. Yeah, I think, which
Right.
is really key. I just did a little Facebook Live yesterday, and I said, remember, we are not what we do, but we are how we do what we do.
And how do we do it?
How do we do it?
How do we I have a phrase in mind that I heard you say on one of your videos that I was listening to that really struck me, and it makes me
Mhm.
almost cry. And I'll just tell you the answer so you don't have to guess.
No, no, no. Let me go. I'm just
Okay.
telling you.
Okay. That how, like, what is one thing that you always need to do in everything that you do in life?
Lead with love.
Yes. Yep, that's it. And I want to tell you that when I was listening to some of your stuff this week
That's it.
before we had our meeting,
You
I was
keep
just
talking.
about
Hold on. Keep talking.
I was just about crying because I have to tell you, my mom tells me to lead with love all the time. Oh my gosh,
Right.
we need those shirts. How do I get that shirt?
There's our t-shirts, Jackrabbit. Lead
All
with
right.
love. It all begins with vision. Don't let dumb shit matter.
Yep.
It's all going to be okay. We got about 5 or 6 of those slogans that we
I
sell
love
some
that.
t-shirts on the website,
Oh,
and we
good.
give a donation to ALS research up in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
That's
My
amazing.
brother-in-law is fighting that ALS battle very courageously. So yeah, so we try to do some good with the t-shirts. But yeah, lead with love.
Well, I'm getting one of those after this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I get a couple. The whole family needs them.
There you go.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, lead with love. I think when you're doing anything, whatever you're doing, let all that you do be done with love, right? Like,
Mhm.
we can't forget, it's when we come back to our morals, when we come back to what is the main purpose of this action or whatever I'm doing in anything ever. To me, this is my viewpoint. It should always be leading with love. How am I
Right.
spreading more love to another person by whatever I'm doing? Is it spreading more love? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, Tori. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit to your experience for a second, and I
Hmm.
do want to talk about more things that you're doing now, which, and I love that all the things that have been created since what happened. But so when you were with God, were you seeing anything, or was this more of a feeling?
It was a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was an existence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, there was no sight,
Mm-hmm.
um, no hearing.
Mm-hmm.
There were no physical senses associated with it, really.
Right. That's so
Other
interesting.
than, when I say it's dark, loving, peaceful. So if I guess if I said it's dark, somebody said, well, you could see then. But
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't as if I was looking and seeing darkness. That was just the experience I had.
Right. And just
You
like
know.
overwhelming unconditional love.
Oh yeah, that doesn't even do it justice. And that was part of the struggle when I came back, because I didn't want to be back.
Mm-hmm.
I came back, my friend's dead. I got a ton of people that love me. I got 6 brothers and 1 sister. We were like Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs growing up, right? The Irish Catholic version of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. But I'm surrounded by a ton of people that love me. My girlfriend at the time, who was my wife, there to support me, to help me get better. And I would not let them in at all. I just was having a hard time being back
Mm-hmm.
here. I call it,
Yeah.
living. I think there's a hell of a difference between living and being fully alive.
Mm-hmm.
Living is just going through the motions. You see people that get stuck, they get in a rut, they don't give a shit about trying to get out of it. They blame it on everybody else. Work, come home, TV, sleep, repeat, repeat. And that's kind of what I was stuck in, until I finally made some peace with myself and the accident and said, you know what, I gotta get better. I
Mm-hmm.
gotta get better.
Mm-hmm. And when did you get to that point? What pushed you to that point of like, I need to get better?
It was one event, really, and there may have been others that led up to it. But if anybody reads Back to Life, they'll read where Jake is down on the Outer Banks of North Carolina in about October, and the day when this is happening, he had been into a little store and he was looking to buy a garden hose that he was going to put in his tailpipe and then run it through the window and just go onto the beach. And that was where I was. I mean, that's truth. That's no fiction there in the book. And I came out and I didn't buy the hose because a lady walked by me. It was a little store, like it was the little beach shop down in the Outer Banks in October. It was all closed up kind of. And I'm looking at these hoses and, my mind is thinking about like, what size should I get? What color should they? Craziest stuff you're thinking about. Right. And this woman goes by and she just kind of spooked me and it snapped me out of it. I'm like, what am I doing, man? I can't buy this hose. And I go from there to the bar and had quite a few beers and maybe a few shots of tequila, because that was my mode of dealing with my dark time. And I came out of that and I was walking back to my motel room and there was a phone booth on the corner of, you may be too young to remember them.
I know what they are.
Yeah. Some young people were like, what's that? A phone booth. I'm like, you go in, you talk to people and they're like, FaceTime. I'm like, no, you got to put money in. They're like, Venmo. I'm like, no. Yeah. The young people don't get it. Anyhow, I go into this glass box, pick up the phone, call my mom. And she said, when are you coming home? We can't wait to see you. And I just had a lump in my throat, as big as a basketball. And I hung up crying. I walked out and I'm walking across a seashell covered parking lot. I'll never forget it. And that little voice in my head just said, I wonder what it's going to be like when I get better. Right? That self-talk. And that was the first time I'd said that since July. So July 20th, all of August, all of September, and a couple of weeks into October. I was not focused on the future at all. So that was the proverbial, switch that flipped. And I said, all right, I got to get home. I got to get better. Now, it wasn't an easy journey. I mean, trust me, I still
I can't imagine that it was. Yeah.
I still battled a lot of demons and, all the kind of crazy stuff you do. You hear voices and, when you're going through a trauma like that, people say to me sometimes, they'll talk about somebody heard voices and can you believe that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Your brain gets broken, man,
Mm-hmm.
and if anybody listening now is near that or close to that or whatever, understand, number one, that it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to agree with where you are, but you have to accept where you are. And that's what okay is. Okay comes either through agreement or acceptance. So if you're struggling with anything at all, welcome to the human race, and let's make sure you get some support. So go find somebody, pick up the phone, email me, Danny@DannyBader.com. I'll get on the phone with you, whatever you might need. Because we can move through these things and we can get better, regardless of the trauma.
Yeah, it can be really hard when you're in the thick of it to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Sure.
Maybe the light at the end of the tunnel isn't in heaven; it's here on earth when we decide to take responsibility and
right on,
change our perception.
Yep, I got a great plaque here in my office that says, "On earth there is no heaven, but there are pieces of it."
That's
awesome. It. So if anybody's struggling, don't go too far out. Just go to tomorrow. Go to the day after that.
Right.
Seek some support. That's going to make you feel better. Asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Right.
So just say, hey, I need some support. And then make sure, even if you're struggling, look to support somebody else, because that's going to make you feel better. Because then you're leading with love, right? Even though you're struggling, you're not making it all about yourself. You're looking to help another human being. You're going to get more benefit from them probably.
Yeah. Acts of service are one way. I like to call it raise your vibration, but to make you feel good.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Good vibes.
Yeah, good vibes is right.
Yeah.
And so when you were in that place, and you're about to get, you're in the Outer Banks, had you told anyone about what you saw when you had your experience? Did they?
Oh yeah. I told Stu right at the scene of the accident, almost just a couple of minutes afterwards. I said, I was yelling to you. And he said, no. And then, I told the doctor in the hospital what happened. And he said I had a loss of consciousness. He wrote it up as LOC. He was like a young, arrogant doctor. If you read the book, you'll see I also called him an asshole. Because I said, listen, I've had loss of consciousness. I get knocked out playing basketball. I've passed out from drinking too much.
Yeah.
Trust me, this was not a loss of consciousness.
Yeah.
This was I like to call it a UOC. A union of consciousness.
Wow. Right? I like that. That's awesome.
My consciousness and Danny Bader connected with the source of it.
Yeah.
And, it's a beautiful thing. I'm in no hurry to die again. And if I was confronted, I would fight like hell to save myself. because, you know, I love my life and my family and my friends. And I know that the other side is there, and it's even more beautiful than what we have here.
Mhm.
But we can't take the easy way out to get to the other side. We got to persevere. And, you know, St. Paul said, run the race, fight the good fight.
Mhm.
That's all part of being human and growing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like you weren't sure where you were going in your life at that time. And
Right.
you're saying, I had a girlfriend of 6 years and I wasn't sure if we were going to get married. So, like, when you came back, were you like, when you started getting yourself back together and not so much in the whole of, I don't want to be here, did you like start realizing that, this is what I want to do and this is who I want to marry? Like, was that kind of an epiphany moment for you?
Yeah, great question. No, it wasn't really. I was just kind of holding on still. I
Mhm,
mean, I was back and I was just trying to do some things that I thought I should do,
mhm,
and do some things that would get me back into normalcy.
mhm,
And, you know, so I went back to school. I went to Westchester, took a few courses there for graduate school just to kind of get back in the game of life. You know, I had my undergrad degree, and then Lisa and I decided to get married about a year, just about 11 months after the accident. And then we had our first son, and I went back to work on the roof with my buddy because, you know, everybody said I shouldn't, but I just felt compelled to go back because he, you know, here he was, he had a great business with his brother, and, you know, I helped him 3 or 4 days a week. And then in an instant, he had nobody.
mhm,
And I think it was somewhat healing for me to kind of go back.
mhm,
And I was there for, I don't even know, maybe 6 months or whatever. You know, and Stu said, you got to get out, you got to move on, you got to go. You know, this is not what you're designed for,
mhm,
you know.
mhm,
But no, sometimes, you know, and that's where, when I wrote the book, that's where Jackrabbit, which is the model that I offer people, and we've got an online course called Back to Life where I walk people through the model. That's really what I've learned from it. You know,
mhm,
vision's really important to me now, the ability to see where you're headed. But back then I had no concept of vision at all.
mhm,
I didn't understand that when you're going through a crappy time, it's okay. Acknowledge that. You got to live in it. You know, it's not unicorns and rainbows, but you got to see the other side of that. You got to go, you know, when I get through this tough time, and I will, and it's going to take a lot of great people to help me, this is what it's going to look like. This is what I'm looking to create right now. You know, whether it's with your business, your relationships, you know, healing over the loss of a loved one, loss of a child, um, you know, divorce, loss of job, whatever it might be. We have so many different traumas coming at us. It's really important to kind of dance between, okay, here I am every day, I'm grinding, and there's that image of, there's that vision, there's that future state that I'm going to get to, you
mhm.
know.
Yeah, it can be really hard. Sometimes I still struggle with like wanting to be at the vision rather than, feeling those small steps that happen in between. But that's where all the magic
Sure.
happens, right?
Yeah, it all begins with vision. I think when you get there, and you know, people say go to your happy place. You've heard that term. That's kind of it. You know, when you're in a place where you're struggling, and you can kind of transport yourself through your imagination
Mhm,
to a better place,
mhm,
that's what's going to give you the energy and the focus to come back and take the actions that you need to take, you know, to move through the tough place,
mhm,
you know, and to deal with the fear, and maybe to forgive somebody who did you real wrong,
mhm.
you know, or to, you know, to realize that, yeah, you had a great job and there's another one out there for you, versus just to say, oh my God, I can't lost that job, I'm never going to make enough money, that was the best one, I'll never find, you know, all that negative stuff we get into.
Yeah, you know what? I just posted on my Instagram yesterday. Our ego will have us crying about a closed door that had nothing behind it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, I study a lot of the Stoic philosophers, you know, Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, and some of these philosophers from a long time ago. And you know, many of them say we suffer, and Einstein said something like it too. We suffer much more in our imagination than in reality,
Mhm.
you know, because
Right.
we fabricate all these fears of what could possibly go wrong, what will go wrong. And then a lot of times, you know, I believe we get what we focus on. So if you're continually focused on things that will go wrong, you know, your unconscious is going to lead you to take actions and say things and do things that's going to kind of produce that.
I
You know,
was
sometimes we can't control it, of course. Um, but you know, you're going to get what you focus on. So
Yep.
you might as well focus on creating something better for ourselves. I mean, I'm doing it right now. My business, think about my business. I was in Costa Rica, or I was in Aruba in March, working for the Ritz-Carlton and Marriott, right? My business, 3-4 years old now of my own. I've been doing work for other people and had the best first quarter ever. And I thought, all right, great, going to be a good year. Well, my business is to get on an airplane, stay in a hotel, and talk to live people in a room. Coronavirus said, no, no, no. So I could bitch about that, or I could say, okay, Danny, what's your purpose in life? Well, it's to support people on this journey of life. Great. And you've done it this way for a long time. How else could you do it? So now it's the redesign of the online course. You know, it's these books. It's book number 4 that's coming out around transitions in life. You know, it's more focused on the podcast and things. So, you know, you just, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. Kind of, you know, get clear on why you're doing what you're doing, and then you'll figure out the what.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, when you're saying, you know, what you believe in, you start seeing more and more of. I actually created a course called Retrain Your Brain, talking to
Oh yeah,
people about doing that, you know, and
perfect.
starting to reframe yourself and you know, starting to see the good that's happening. It's all about perception.
It really is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yeah.
I just did a Facebook Live yesterday and said 5 things that I've learned from COVID. And
Mm-hmm.
I just broke down those letters into what I learned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I learned a lot about control. I learned a lot about oneness and coming together. I learned, again, it's important to get to your values. It's important to get into your self-image is the I, and then the D is have direction and connect to the divine.
Yeah.
That's what COVID reminded me of and taught me some things.
Yeah, and it also like forced us all to be adaptable to change, right? Like if you can't be adaptable to change, how are you gonna you know what I mean? You're not going to be able to move forward in your purpose. You're going to start losing it. And instead of being so focused on, you know, you could have been focused on how I need to be around people. I need to be, you know, going to
Yeah,
these locations, but you had to adapt and like we all
sure.
do. So it's
Yep.
awesome. It's amazing.
Yep.
So one of my favorite questions to ask near-death experiencers is if you believe in having a soul contract, and do you think, if so, that you put having your near death experience in your plan for coming to life as Danny Bader?
Hmm. So let me break that question down. That's a good one. So do I have a soul contract, right?
Yeah, like, do you think, like, before you came here, you're like, all right, in this life, I'm going to be a roofer. I'm going to have a near death experience. And then, you know, it's going to change me. And I'm going to ultimately, you know, be inspiring people and sharing my story and that.
I don't know. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to figure out many, many times why I came back,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because people say, oh, God wasn't ready for you. He has a plan for you. She has a plan for you. Um, and I stopped trying to figure that out
Mm-hmm.
and just said, all I know is that I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And that experience is one that I need to share with people
Mm-hmm.
and need to do my best to support people on their own journey towards love and growth and happiness and fulfillment and, you know, resilience and perseverance and moving through the tough times.
Yeah, it's amazing, and we're lucky to have you to be doing that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
I'm happy to be here. It took a little while to get all that sorted out. And I don't know that it's entirely sorted out,
It's got to be a
but
lifelong process, right? And even
I
beyond
think
this life,
so.
you know? Wait,
Yeah, I think it is. I think it
did
is.
you
So,
say that?
you know,
Hang on, go ahead.
whether or not God has that plan for us, you know, it's all part of God's plan. I mean, I guess I could go with that, but I don't. And you know, I wrote about in the one book, and I wrote another book called "I Met Jesus for a Miller Lite,"
Mm-hmm.
and that's there's some same messages in there that, you know, what you have to understand is what I believe is God's not up there pulling the strings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, God didn't make COVID happen. God doesn't make people die. God doesn't make war and everything else. You know, this world unfolds as it unfolds because we're humans, you know, and while God, I believe the divine, the energy, the consciousness could prevent some of these, that's not how it was designed,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I think it's more for me, it's about, St. Francis de Sales had a really good quote. Our boys went to Salesianum, and I was educated by the Oblates, and he said, have no fear for what tomorrow brings. The same loving God who cared for you yesterday will care for you today and tomorrow. So put aside any anxious thoughts and just trust.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, God is going to be here to get us through whatever we need to get through.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be so much easier if we could just drop the anxious thoughts? So, like, they still just pop in. It's hard.
They do, but it's really, you got to do the work.
Yeah.
That's it, because there are people that don't have anxious thoughts, or that when they do, they catch themselves, right? I'm reading Jay Shetty's book, Think Like a Monk, right now, that I'm enjoying. And, there are people, and I'm working towards that. I'm still not there. But, when you think about our anxiety, a lot of times it's an imagination of a negative outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And where the Stoic philosophers and a lot of these people, they expected negative outcomes. They expected tragedy and wars and traumas and loss and pain and suffering. They didn't wake up every day like sitting there going, oh, okay, here it comes, like Glum from Gulliver's Travels.
Yeah.
So it's not that. You wake up and you be alive, be fully alive. Don't go through the motions and engage with life. And know that there are going to be some hardships because you're a human being. So when the hardships show up, they don't have such a tendency to knock you off course. You see what I mean? It's still going to be hurt. It's still going to be pain. It's still going to be struggle. When you're sad because you lose somebody, I'm not saying you get rid of the sadness. That's got to run its course. But also know that it all unfolds, and this is not the end. This world is not the end.
Mm-hmm.
I think our anxiety comes from what we would lose and what could go wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you. And actually, I want to say this morning, I was actually, sometimes I personally get a fear that, like, what if something, my life feels good right now. What if something bad happened that really, messed things up or whatever? I just thought of the affirmation, I don't need to go through suffering to experience the life lessons that I have to learn. And so I want to affirm myself that, so that I'm not continuously going down the rabbit hole of what bad is going to happen to me. Like, of course, I know I have tools that I can work through if something bad does happen. And so, but also, we don't have to necessarily go through suffering in a sense.
Yeah.
We don't have to anticipate suffering. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not as though you sit around and you focus on it, although you know that it is a possibility,
right?
And that's a difference.
Yeah.
But every day you'll want to engage, in being fully alive. And this just happened to me this week. My dad's 91. My mom's 82. Love them dearly. They're doing great. But my dad had hernia surgery last week, and they took him in. They didn't really know what it was. Mm-hmm. And at 91, you don't know what's happening. And my brothers and sisters were all texting, and because of COVID, you can't visit. And, he was going to have surgery at 1:00. So I'm laying there, but I'm really not sleeping. You're waiting for the next text. The next text never comes. So I'm laying all night. My thought was, shit, dad died, and they're not going to text us until the morning to let us know. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, that restless night of sleep, I got my brother and sister, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I thought she was going to text you that it was okay. I thought he was going to text you. We fell asleep. And, so he's fine. Thankfully, he just had a hernia. They fixed it up. He's coming home. He came home today at 4:00. But again, they're your mind without information. Where there's no information, we have a tendency to go expect the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's why it's so important as well when we're suffering or you think somebody's going through a challenging time. You got to talk.
Yep.
Got to talk. Great book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. I don't know if you read that one, but one of them is, I wish I had expressed my feelings more. Mm-hmm. Have to.
Yeah. Because, and you're reminding me of one thing that Brene Brown talks about, which is the story I'm telling myself. So when there's not enough communication, you go down this rabbit hole of this story that is not based in fact at all. It's imagination, and you're creating it in your mind.
You got it.
Talk then.
Brene is very insightful. I love her and her work, and just her authenticity. What I love too about her is she is obviously at a very high level of life coach, influencer, whatever term we put on it. And she's just so, to me, my experience is just so authentic still.
Yeah.
The fact of the millions of dollars and the millions of books and all the people that sell out to come see her speak. She's just so, for me, so cool.
Yeah.
And I got to believe that's really the way she is.
Right.
Because you see some of these folks that get to a certain area or a certain level, and then, the ego kicks in, and, like they pontificate that they have all the answers and everything else. And I'm like, shit, we don't have all the answers. We're just a vehicle to try to support people,
I know. Well, you know that my mission, obviously, if I'm asking you about your near-death experience, a part of my mission is to figure out as much as I can about heaven or the afterlife, right? And so I'm like, gathering all sorts of people's stories, but sometimes people just say, if they had a medium might have someone contacted and come through for a family member, and they're like, it's so much different than we even think it is. And it's like, even though we want to say we have answers, like we have really no idea.
No. No, you got to trust. I always, when people talk about, one of the things I talk about is going from hope to trust.
Mm-hmm.
Because hope for me is, it's still, it's kind of a passive, I hope everything works out. Just say, I hope everything works out, and then say, I trust everything's going to work out. I hope I can do this. I trust I can do this. Our words have so much energy. And I think when you just, for me, it's all about trust. I got it on my intent bracelet right now, because it's something over the past couple of years I really had to focus on, because I would find myself slipping back into the, oh my gosh, I hope all this works out, going out to create your own business versus just to sit in trust,
I agree with you 100%. And I've been working with affirmations for a while, and some of my new affirmations are helping me trust more. And I hope to share this with everyone else, which is, one that her name is Catherine Zenkina says is, my success is inevitable. And so sometimes when I question whether I'm going to be successful, or whether I'm going to have this thing that I want, or whether I'm going to have that thing, I'm like, I am the creator of my reality. So I know I'm going to get what I want. It's just a matter of when. And when we start to flip that and trust that we have the tools that we need to get what we want, it's kind of like the weight is off our shoulders, and we just can enjoy the ride. We have to take the actions, but we can enjoy the ride a lot more.
Yes, you can. And it's interesting there too, when people, success and want, usually it comes back to material things, right? Houses, cars, money, those kinds of things. And I think that's normal. And the people that I've seen that have a lot of that have that I really admire, have really paid attention to the process. So again, it gets back to, as you pursue, whatever it is, big house, beach house, Porsche, whatever you're pursuing, it's kind of like, how am I going about doing that? And I believe that the more pure and goodness is in the process, then the outcome's just going to take care of itself. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I listened a lot to Lewis Howes on his podcast, The School of Greatness. And he's got Matthew McConaughey, the actor, on a recent episode. I think it's maybe the most recent one. But Matthew McConaughey was saying the same thing. He does his best work when he's just in the process of making a film. And he said, when I get to the end and they go, okay, that's a wrap. And he's like, all right, I'll see everybody. I'll see you in the morning for the next scene. And they're like, no, we're done. He said, what do you mean? I'm coming back tomorrow. And they said, no, we're done. You're done. And he's like, man, I was just so much in the process, right? Being in the now, the present, all those things, that then typically the outcomes will take care of themselves. Same way in relationships, right? If you stay in the relationship and you stay in the good times and the bad times, and you're authentic to one another, and you talk through the difficult times, chances are you're going to have a really strong relationship that exists for a long time. If you don't stay in that and you're too focused on the vision, right, then this will probably get murky, because we're not doing and being how we need to be.
Right. 100%. I agree with you.
Yeah.
All right. So I have two more questions. Well, one specific question about your near-death experience, and then kind of like a wrap up before we get going for today. But I wanted to ask you, some people, and I can't remember, but I think I had this little inkling. Something's telling me to ask you about whether you had a life review or not. Some people, when they go, they've described having, I don't know what it might look like, but we call it a life review here on.
Sure.
Did you have that?
I would say I did have one,
Yeah.
but like a Cliff Notes version.
Okay.
I had a sense of a quick review of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe God was satisfied with how I lived, even with
He's
some
like,
of my,
you did a good job.
even with some of the knucklehead things I did, and some of the sins, obviously. But I knew in that review that, okay, we're good, and I was going to be able to move further. And then that's, as I said, that's where that, do you want to stay or do you want to go?
I see.
And I said, what about my mom? So yeah, quick life review, but it wasn't as if, I was guided by some being that took me back to when I was a, infant and then high school. And it wasn't that, and I know people in near-death experiences that I've read about or whatever. 90 Minutes in Heaven, is a very popular book and an account of a guy that was in a car accident, and his experience of heaven was a lot different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
His was in a physical, and he could hear beautiful music, and the streets were paved with gold. And, I just didn't have that experience. I believe he did.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
I don't know why they're different. It's just, they're different.
Yeah. And but we're really grateful that you're willing to share yours with us as well, and not talk yourself down because your streets weren't paved with gold, because
Yeah, no, it's okay.
the thing that gets me like really the most emotional is the unconditional love piece. Like that makes me like want to cry to think about how we come down to earth. And I made a video about this on my page after listening to someone talk about this, and I'm thinking, we come down from heaven and we search for love in all aspects of our lives. We just want to be loved by others, in a relationship with our family, with our friends, in all different ways. And it's just, it can be fulfilling on earth, but it's just not the same. I can tell my soul yearns for more always.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, as I said, when I expressed concern for my mom and Lisa, that was love.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I was expressing love because I didn't want them to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what brought me back.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about it, I didn't say, oh no, I need to go back and make more money, have a big house, have a beach house. I didn't express any of that. My concern was just the love of two other people, and a lot more, but they were the ones that, I don't even want to say came to mind, because I don't know that I had my mind then, but that was the conversation.
That is actually really awesome perspective to make note of, and we talk about this, on your deathbed, you're not going to say, I wish I worked more, I wish I made more money. You're going to say, I wish I spent more time with my family or my friends, or express my feelings more. Yep. So
that's the 5 regrets of the dying. You just named 3 of them.
Yep.
Number 4 is I wish I allowed myself to be happier. I wish I didn't work so much, express my feelings, more time with my friends, allow myself to be happier. I can't remember the 5th one, but yeah, you just kind of rattled them off.
Yeah, maybe loved more. I don't know. Loved others more, And so before we wrap up and go, is there anything else that you want people to know about how your near-death experience impacted you and shaped your life?
Anything else? I think we covered everything, Tori. I would just offer to them, 2 things that I know. Life is much better for you and for those around you when you lead with love. And when your body stops working in this physical sense, there's a part of you that's going to continue on. That's what I would humbly offer the audience.
That's awesome. And I like I said, I can't express enough gratitude for your willingness to come on today and share your story with us, and be your authentic true self. That's my mission on this planet, is to help people be their authentic self. So
well, you're doing a great job at that. You keep it up.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we'll have to grab a beer or coffee in Westchester sometime.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Or down in Cape May, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. At Harpoons, maybe.
You got it. Harpoons on the Bay.
Awesome. Okay. So as we wrap up, where can, if anyone's interested in finding more about you, learning more about you, where can they find you?
So a lot of social media. Facebook is my main social media outlet. So there's a Danny Bader personal page and a business page, and the YouTube channel has got an awful lot of videos on there. And then my website is dannybader.com. And that would list, they could get the books, the T-shirts, some of my training, the virtual course, the online course. That's all there on the website. So yeah, if they're interested, they can contact me through there. And again, as I said, if anybody, has a question, or maybe you're having a little bit of a difficult, challenging time in life right now, I'm happy to answer an email. And even if we need to pick up the phone and talk for 20 minutes, I'd be happy to do that.
That's awesome. Yep. So I know I'll be on the website looking for the Lead with Love shirts because I need those. So,
you got it.
Awesome.
They're nice. You'll love them. Nice fitted T-shirts and a soft cotton. They're fabulous.
Yep. I'm putting that on as soon as I get it.
You got it. Well, you take a picture and post it out there for us.
I will. Oh, I definitely will. So, all right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for coming today and listening to our near-death experience series episode with Danny Bader through Illuminated Hearts. If you want to find me, you can find me at illuminated_hearts_ on Instagram or at illuminated-hearts.com.